Hi, and welcome to PowerPoints. We're here in Overland Park, Kansas, the headquarters of Black Veatch. Joining me now is Andy Byers. Andy is the Director of Environmental Services for the Energy Group here at Black Veatch. Andy, we had a major decision from the U.S. Supreme Court recently. They ruled against the mercury and air toxics standard, a rule that's been in place for a few months now. What does this mean for the power generation industry? Does this mean that utilities can stop moving forward with compliance, or do these utilities, do these power producers need to continue moving forward with their plans?
Well, because of the timing of this decision, and actually the actual outcome of the decision, they really have no choice right now but to continue to maintain their plans towards compliance with this, because the key of the Supreme Court decision is they didn't actually invalidate the rule. They only came out with the opinion on the rule as to what the lower court will have to do with regards to their findings.
I see. So they've simply kicked it back to the EPA to revisit and revamp the rule.
Actually, technically what they did is they took the decision of the lower court, the District of Columbia Circuit Court of Appeals, who actually upheld the rule. They reviewed that, they reversed that rule, but instead of invalidating it, they sent the decision back to the lower court for them to make a ruling in accordance with the Supreme Court's findings.
I see. And they did that because they had a concern that the rule did not factor the cost of compliance in its decision to regulate mercury and other air emissions.
That's exactly right. What the Supreme Court found, and all the headlines and the sound bites that came out right after the ruling was released, was all about the EPA failed to consider costs in doing its rulemaking action. But when you really look at the analysis of the rule itself, what the Supreme Court found was the EPA failed to consider costs in their first stage of the rulemaking process.
Yeah.
And that's when they made what they called a regulatory determination that it was appropriate and necessary to regulate mercury emissions from coal and oil-fired power plants.
I see, I see. Now that this has happened, what are some of the key timing considerations that utilities and power producers have to keep in mind?
Well, the first key is the fact that they didn't invalidate the rule and they sent it down to the Circuit Court of Appeals. The Circuit Court of Appeals, they're going to reconsider certain petitions from the litigants. They'll have to take supplemental briefings. They've got an actual summer recess on tap for this coming month, so it's not going to be until sometime this fall at the very earliest until they come out with a decision. They could decide to vacate the rule, they could decide to stay or suspend the rule, they could decide to leave the rule in place, but until the Circuit Court makes that decision, that puts the regulated utilities in kind of a limbo state because they still have to meet the compliance deadlines under the rule, which is still in place.
Now, a lot's been written and said about this ruling. What are you hearing from your power producing clients as they move forward in considering this ruling?
Well, they don't have a whole lot of options, especially those, now a number of these, our clients and the utility industry have already undertaken plans and installed controls to meet the first deadline of the rule, which was actually April of this year.
That's right.
Others are in the midst of actually adding controls, and they are, with the April 2016 extension deadline, have to complete those by that point in time. So they don't have a whole lot of options as far as what to do in the meantime. There are some utilities that have decided to either switch coal units to gas or to retire units.
Yeah.
They have a little bit more flexibility, but then again, the EPA actually has already done their cost analysis, so it could be just a temporary reprieve. And then the other side of this is that you can't just look at it, this decision's only with regard to MATS. There's other environmental regulatory decisions that are driving them to either switch to gas or to shut down the units altogether.
Now Black Veatch is in the middle of working on several air quality control projects. How does this ruling impact the status of those projects?
We haven't seen any delays or slowdowns in any of our projects. We've got a number of clients that are looking at the decision and trying to determine if there is some time to make a change in their decisions, but quite honestly, those that are underway have decided to go forward. Some of them are just looking at the decision themselves and saying, we don't think it's going to be overturned, so we're going forward. But a lot of others have other regulatory drivers that are driving those upgrades. Some have, for example, there's two that are actually in a state that has its own state mercury emission limits, so
Yeah.
The Supreme Court ruling does nothing for the state limits that are already
Yeah.
in effect. Two are under a consent decree. Others have requirements that they need to meet with either regard to regional haze or
Yeah.
the cross-state air pollution rules. So there's a lot of other things in play here. And then there's still, the impending Clean Power Plan rule to be released next month.
That's a perfect segue into my next question. There's been a lot of speculation how this ruling might impact other pending regulations. What implications could this ruling have on those types of rules?
Well, there's a lot of potential implications. I'd like to just highlight three if I could. So the first thing with regard to the Clean Power Plan, curiously, this vacator, or by overturning the MATS rule, if that's what the Circuit Court decides to do,
Right.
that may actually undermine one of the key legal challenges to the EPA's Clean Power Plan. The vacator would remove coal and oil-fired power plants from regulation under Section 112 of the Clean Air Act, which would resolve an inherent conflict in Section 111D of the Clean Air Act, which is the section in which the Clean Power Plan is.
I see.
So I don't want to get too much, it's kind of
Sure.
complicated, but basically what that would do is that a lot of folks are speculating that EPA may actually go back to the Circuit Court and ask them to overturn their rule, because that'll free them up until the dust settles on all the litigation on the Clean Power Plan.
I see. So this could have a meaningful impact on the process.
It'll be very interesting to see. Now, the EPA is still maintaining that they have authority under Section 111D, regardless of the outcome, but once we have all the filings in the Circuit Court, it'll be interesting to see how they approach all that.
Yeah. How would you describe the market for retrofit projects designed to comply with the MATS rule? How strong of a market is it? Aren't most coal-fired plants already compliant with MATS?
Right. No, over half of them actually made their decisions and did some installations of controls ahead of the original April 2015 deadline. The rest of them are now doing upgrades to meet the 2016 deadline, and they're so far along in that process that unless they are not in the middle of construction, there's very little chance to rethink that.
Yeah, I see.
So we don't see a whole lot of change with regard to the air quality control upgrade. They're going ahead with that just because they don't have enough time left between now and the time that the Circuit Court makes its decision and that April 2016 deadline to come and complete those projects.
I see. Well, as you said, it's a very complicated issue, and you've done a great job of helping us understand the issue much better. Thank you so much for your time.